Welcome to another episode of the Reboot Chronicles, a no-holds-barred forum with global leaders, authors, entrepreneurs, and CEOs about how organizations stay focused on growth and innovation in unprecedented times. I'm your host, Dean Tobias, coming to you live from Reviv's North American headquarters in Chicago, and we would like to thank you for joining us from around the globe today.
I'd like to welcome Brad Lukanic. He is the CEO of one of the world's fastest growing design companies, CannonDesign. Founded in 1945, the firm and its associates have been through numerous reboots. With dozens of offices and thousands of employees around the globe, Brad has rebooted them through organic growth, creative partnerships, and acquisitions, positioning them as more of a full life cycle services platform with strategic consulting, architecture, services, experience in social impact design, engineering, asset, and software solutions. That's a lot of stuff. We'll get into it. I like Brad because he's really passionate about accelerating design as a cross-disciplinary disruptor and creating positive impact within and beyond the built world. So, Brad, good to see you.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Yeah, I always love talking about design from a business point of view. It's usually from a design point of view, so we can touch on both. But, 1945, that's a long time. At one point, I heard you guys were 100 years old, and I saw the 1945, so it must have had previous companies or something.
Yeah, there was a father in Niagara Falls before that. I think it goes back to 1917. But then the two sons who are brothers, one was an architect, one was an engineer. So the whole firm is built on this idea of an integrated practice back from 45 with its current foundation.
Wow, 1917. So yeah, I'll have to do some checking. All my dad's family was from Niagara Falls, and it was 1917. So I bet they knew each other, maybe. Well, let's talk about
maybe.
Since you got there, talk about your growth strategy. And I love leaders that do the BBB model. Build, buy, borrow. A lot of organic growth, partnering strategically, but also you guys aren't afraid of M&A and acquiring things. So what's this journey been like?
Well, it's been an interesting journey, and I was fortunate enough to be asked by the board to take over in 2016. I followed a CEO that had led the company through expansion and growth of 26 years. But I think one of the things that when I was meeting with the board was really about the question about what does the future hold? So what I like about the word, reboot, you can take the simple idea of just boot up again and restart and maybe do a few things differently, but if you take the other definitions, it's about to establish a new beginning or to think about a new version of something. And so we've spent a lot of time the last several years thinking about what is the value of an architecture engineering firm? What is the value of a design firm? What does the world need? Because the design profession or the architecture profession is through, like most professional services, going through this massive evolution. So it's just fascinating to think about how do you think about a business to convey positive impact through the work you do, but know that your vehicle that you're on is continually being redesigned by the external forces in the industry.
Yeah, if you go way back, it was just architecture firms, and it was architecture design, construction services. But how'd you get into software?
Well, okay. So we got into it because we have long seen a lot of architecture being a 3-year window. You design for a year, you build a project for 2 years, you hope you do a good job, and then the client hires you again for the next 3-year window. Now, could be 3.5, could be 4, but the idea is it's a narrow window.
Right.
The whole point is for us is how do you make a 30-year window? How do you provide a suite of design impact services, either from our front-end premier consulting that works with the C-suite on what is the future of cancer care, what is the future of education, what is the future of science and tech discovery, to the back end is how do you manage those facilities through software and through data for 30 years. So we have been launching new companies in the addition to mergers just to actually do this omni-channel design spectrum that is far deeper and wider than the 3-year window that most other architecture and engineering firms stay in.
I have not seen too many people in your industry doing that. I think some of them are like Open Hand and AMP and some of the other things that you've been doing. That's pretty gutsy. That's totally changing your model. there's high touch, low margin companies and low touch, high
Yeah.
margin tech companies that I'm usually in. It sounds like you're starting to blend here.
So there's a diagram that we show, and we did it a lot when we were running to all of our 17 offices on this doing and developing a strategic framework, which was our inclusive process to ask people to say, what does the future hold?
Yeah.
But it talks about the ways to compete. And there you can talk about price, you can talk about commodity or volume, but it's also for us about impact or being different, that we provide a value that others can't. And so by doing these other business lines, which are distinct but connected, it's meant to just provide a different sea or ocean for us to swim in, and provide something different for clients. And I think it also gives a sense of inspiration about what is different to be here when you're working every day.
Yeah. Now I know why they hired you. You guys needed to let go of the past business models and boxes you were stuck in. When when people call me, they'll say, "Hey, we want Reboot partners to help us with this project. We love your playbook." I always go, you know what? If you're hiring someone for their playbook, you're in deep. Dude, whatever got you here is not going to get you to the next level. And
Yeah.
whatever our playbook was, even 18 months ago, it's totally changing. And they're like, yeah, we like the muscle memory and the connected tissue. They use all these big words, seeing around corners and wisdom. And I'm like, are you calling me old? Um, what's your take on the new playbook versus the old?
I mean, I think
Or
the
maybe
question
there
is
isn't
just,
a playbook. Maybe that's a better.
I mean, like, look, there's lots of examples of playbooks, and people can always say, well, that's always worked for us, or that never worked for us in that playbook. I mean, I think of it less as a playbook, as less as you got to be out there listening to the signals from what the clients are saying. And there's some really big issues, like with all the changes. I mean, let's take a very simple thought that the world is through this massive change. Some have said it's the fourth industrial revolution, where the advancements of material sciences, biological, technical advancements.
Yep.
If you look at how a professional services firm, like a design delivery firm, has to provide value, you can't use a playbook that is based on a different model. And so I think our mindset is look forward, fail fast, and not everything we've done has been wildly successful. But if we get 6 out of 7 things right, 5 out of 7 things right, and we do no harm along the way, we're going to just push to break a few things along the way and be better.
Yeah, I like that. Again, rare for your industry. So how do you catch
Yeah.
the wave? Because you're making 5-year bets, just in your core
Yep.
business, but in your extensions, you're like, hey, what else can we get into? So just curious, how do you look at catching the wave? I'm trying to think of an example. Oh, okay, some downtown places, my hometown, Chicago, a lot of empty buildings right now. But
Yep.
how do you look at something like that and say, this is an opportunity for us?
You know what's so interesting is the big talk is about how to convert those empty buildings into residential units
That's
or
the old.
dwelling
That's the
units.
old playbook.
Exactly, that's the old playbook. I think the question is what brings you to a center of an urban environment, and why are some cities thriving and so dynamic? Why is Nashville, and why is San Francisco challenged? I think you have to understand the mobility, the access to experience, and think about it not as a single use, but how the city all ties together and networks together, and understand that there's something bigger than just the building or just the function of a tower. And I think we spend a lot of time on the urban connectivity of
Yeah.
what buildings can do and be.
Oh, God, you're so right. That sounds so stupid, but you're right. But that's your DNA. You've got this user. I was chairman of a UX design company where we're doing buildings.
Yep.
But so you are bringing this ethnography, user experience, design stuff into, okay, what are people actually doing? So there's
Yep.
one way to do that. You watch them, you see where they want. But how do you predict that out 5-10 years? Because you're building stuff that should last for 100 years. Technically.
Well, yeah. I mean, and if you design at the bar minimum that a 30-year life cycle of a building before it should reinvent, I mean, that's the big question, especially when you get into like healthcare, which is so dynamic and changing. What is the future of an operating room when all the tools and the medical devices that surgeons are using are changing?
All I know
I
is
think
it's
that's
supposed to have a good audio system. That's all I know. Good music.
exactly. That's right. So
I think
you've been,
MASH started that or something. I don't
I
know.
was going to say you've been watching a few of the TV series on that. So
Anyway,
I think the question is, look, I don't profess that leadership has all the right answers. You touched on the word AMP earlier on.
Mhm.
That's our in-house incubator. What is it? It's meant to be that a good idea can come from any level of the firm through a process, and a person may not know how a business case is for it or the legal case, but if they have an idea, we have a pipeline to take and advance interesting things, not just from top down, but bottom up. And frankly, I think that has been something that gets me up every day when you see different ideas, some of which are not mature, but some of which you're saying, hey, we didn't see it that way. Now we should.
right. Got it. What about, so what's living centered design? I've heard a lot about that.
Yeah. Well, living center design is about an ethos, about what do we want to create that actually has a greater purpose, a greater calling, such as equity, such as the planet, sustainability, climate, big ideas, big innovation. And it's about understanding that, I mean, some of it, some people have used experiential design or human centered design. I think human centered design is singular in nature. Living centered design is about
very
the
selfish,
ecosystem.
yes.
Yeah. So living centered design is about an ecosystem, not unlike the city example that I just gave to you, is that how things are interconnected. The trajectory, the pathways of people to do something. And I think it is a simple message for us to do good, to do right. That's one of our maxims in our living center design.
Right.
And to try and do something of a higher calling.
Yeah. So when you look at that, again, you're saying, okay, we still have to build things that are functional for people, but we want it to be more responsible, or at least be part of the environment. It kind of goes back to the core cities questions, like, you know, what could we do besides just build another building with a massive 3-story lobbies and things like that? By the way, I want to get back to that because I'm a builder. I mean, I own every power tool almost on the planet, and so can we just do another example, like rebooting these buildings? What about libraries? I know you've got some passion around that.
Yeah.
How do we reboot libraries? Have we already? Because the ones I go to, they're kind of, there's like computers there, but it doesn't seem like it's been rebooted to me yet.
Okay. Libraries are probably one of the great experiments that are out there right now as they're trying to figure out. And there's really two types of, experiences. One is from the public library and the communities that they serve, and how a children and a caregiver might experience a library in a public and community setting, or a senior citizen that needs to go and do something on a computer, whether it's a help or advice on something simple. So you have a place where it's not to go find a thing, but to shape an experience. And the thing might be the traditional book or a piece of material.
Right.
There's so much now. And if you look at, there's actually a library that I was fortunate to be a part of in Charlotte called Imaginon, which mixed a children's library. And it wasn't part of this firm, but it was prior in my life. But it was mixing a children's library and a community theater. I mean, the idea of rethinking what one does,
that's good. I
to
like
engage the community, is totally what it's about.
Because
in the academics, go ahead.
Well, no, I was going to say the old playbook was, hey, I got to go there because there's a computer and a landline. And now everyone's just got their phone. They're like, I don't need to go there. I already looked it up, Dean. I'm like, yeah, but that's not real research. That's like, so people aren't going there just to get connectivity anymore, though free Wi-Fi helps. But do they need to do something more radical? Like, that's a great one. Like, should there be coffee shops in there, or maybe better yet, bars in co-located that are, so people are getting creative, lingering, do whatever they want to do? Is it the next coffee shop? I don't know.
I don't know. I think that is actually, I think it depends on the urban environment that they're in, especially for the public libraries or community libraries. I also think that why do people gather? Why do people connect? And what can the library do for a sense of
Ah,
social connection?
yep.
Because I think in the post-COVID world,
Love
there
that.
is lots of stories about isolation or disconnectedness. I actually think public libraries can be one of the great bastions of community connectivity through lectures, through seminars, through a coffee exchange, through a theater or a performance, and it's a gathering place.
And what when you look at the just switching to growth again, so you're one of the few firms that service firms that has, I think, done some good M&A. I'm sure you learned a lot of lessons.
Yeah.
What's been the strategy there? Like, you just recently bought one. What's the idea there? Is it more just expansion, growth, revenue, or extensions, vertical integrations, new products and services like software?
Okay, so what's really interesting is in our world, we're starting to see more and more private equity come into the architecture and landscape or engineering landscape and other businesses. Why is private equity interested in it? Part of it is the growth mindset.
Right.
I would distinguish and say, we're an employee-held company with a pretty diverse set of ownership among ourselves, but our purpose for growth is actually to grow not through just size, because I don't think growth for size sake is actually a means to an end. It's the question is what is missing in your arsenal and ready to deploy that has impact. The acquisition that we did in the Pacific Northwest is one of the leading firms on sustainability,
Mhm.
as well as sports, human performance, and experience. Two very key topics, I think, in the world today about climate resiliency and then also human performance at that level. So we're excited about that. They're also another add-on in the behavioral health space for us, where in the mental health and the crisis that's in front of us on that front, it is augmenting through new things versus just growing because we didn't have a place in the Pacific Northwest. That's a fool's errand.
Yeah, good point. And anything coming out of your incubator, accelerator, AMP?
Yeah, I mean, okay, so this would not be typical for a architecture and engineering firm, but one of the most
Perfect.
things that I'm most excited about is actually a children's book. So Deja the Dynamo, someone and a group of individuals really wanted to bring up the topic about pipeline and addressing pipeline for the future architect that may not even know that they want to be an architect. And they proposed through the AMP incubator, not something architectural as a thing or a widget or a piece of carpeting or something, but actually a book that told a story about the profession. And I'm pretty proud of the fact that the incubator supported that, because that is about impact.
Yeah, and recruiting the next generation.
Yeah.
So what would you recommend the next gen? Let's say the ones that are going into college or thinking about writing a big check for that. What it sounds like they should not be learning the old playbook. Unfortunately, a lot of our institutions are still still teaching that across their
Yeah.
industries. But yeah, what do you tell them?
So it's a funny story. I just had that question asked to me. I just got back from Rome. My son is doing a study abroad program, and he was in Rome for the semester. And a
Oh,
couple of the
nice.
students that he's there with said, "Does it make sense to be an architect?" And I said, "It has never been a better time to be a designer, because with the advancements in AI, you're going to have a whole set of tools that can help you spend more time in design thinking and design planning for some big problems, and not having to just do the tactical, technical aspects of it in isolations. It's a new partner into this. And like, if I could be an architect all over, I would pick this time to be an emerging architect, because you have a whole set of new things to go and build upon.
Yeah, your creativity can go wild with the
Yeah.
tools. You used to have to draw everything as an example. So you're
Yeah.
you're hiring people for the next wave that's out of your wheelhouse. How do you figure out you've grown a lot. You want a fast
Yeah.
company. You're one of fast companies. You're always on their hot list. How do you keep finding the people you need? Because it's not the ones you used to always hire.
Well, what's interesting is the types of people that we are hiring today are often not in the traditional streams of the design practice. We have an innovation fellow in health. We have a PhD researcher We have focus on health and human performance. And I think it's not without a plan. And, whether it's a playbook or a plan book, we use a strategic framework. And it's a 5-year event horizon that says, where do we think we can provide bigger value? And so we've identified through 5 work streams, from people are everything to impact is our business to remarkable and regenerative design to technology and other fronts, how to be a better design firm. And in that comes work streams about the talent that we think needs to be at the forefront. I'm really excited. We just hired a fantastic technologist to challenge us on coding and software and thinking about the future. And so I think we are looking for different.
Yeah. How do you choose to invest? I was going to say money, but really resources, time, clout. You guys can,
Yeah.
you can bring a lot to the table through a partnership and stuff. So not so much M&A, but how do you choose where to place these bets? So I got the 5-point thing that makes great sense. Gives some clarity, gives some swim lanes, gives some areas where you can improve. But how do you actually, when people come to in your office, these people that, are hopefully coming out of college now, you just told them what to do. Yeah, they want to come to you with a proposal. How do you decide, let's do this one versus that one?
I think that's the risk, right? You worry about maybe missing the golden idea.
I've missed them. As CEOs, you can't grab everyone, but it is the art of knowing how to choose. And I'm just wondering how do you do it? Because it tells a lot about your leadership style too.
I'm going to profess, I don't think we probably get it all right. I think what we've strived to do is to actually listen a little bit more than talk. And I think, there's a lot of microphones out in the world right now. I think part of leadership is listening to signals, surrounding yourself with people far smarter than you. And by the way, I love it when I'm in the room, when I'm not the smartest person in the room, which is more often than not. And you follow a little bit of data, but you also follow your gut. And I think when you listen, your gut actually speaks up.
Yeah. And if it's something core, it's different from like, let's go off on this wild tangent. Like I never would have assumed a book, though I love that. I was gonna guess it was a game, by the way, but that's probably coming. Then the movie.
Just be patient. We'll have to come back again.
Be patient, Dean. Yeah. I'm very impatient. But do you do? So back to the core business. You probably have researchers. You do a lot of research and watch people. And is that a big part of informing your decisions?
I think research is a big part of it, and it's growing every day. And there's different types of levels research. There's research about everything from a sustainability or a climate action that we want to take, to smart buildings and how buildings are going to transform, to actually true deep PH-led research or initiatives with institutions. So there's different levels of research that we engage and employ, and different people and different projects engage in it different ways. But we try and set it as an open canvas of the ability to think and dream and explore needs to be as core as the execution of the work, based on health, safety, and welfare, which is what the profession is really charged with.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. I just come back to leadership, but how do people describe you as a leader now? I'm sure you've evolved like most of us.
Probably impatient, not unlike you. Probably moving fast, but I also think accessible. I try and be accessible. When I go to the offices, I try and sit in the cafe. I try not to be scheduled with meeting to meeting, and I try and just be there, because sometimes you might actually run into somebody really wicked smart that has an idea that just doesn't have a pipeline or a way to say, "Hey, have you thought about this?"
Yeah. How do you guys stay competitive? Because there's a lot of firms out there doing this. I actually have kind of answered the question already, but it's you are doing some fascinating things. But do you worry about competition? Are you a little paranoid there?
All the time. I mean, if you're not
I'm
worried about
projecting a little bit
competition,
here, but whatever.
well, I think you have a sense of arrogance if you're not worried about competition.
Exactly.
So,
That's
and arrogance, maybe confidence has its place. I don't think arrogance has it, because then you get
that,
lulled
that's a
into,
good differentiator. Okay.
yeah. So I think you need to have a sense of confidence, but you sense of confidence that whatever you're innovating today
Yeah.
is going to be likely, if it's popular or knowledgeable or useful, mainstream tomorrow. So I think part of the underlying foundation of this firm and why it's existed as long as it has is that it does an integrated approach, not a singular work stream approach. We don't hire different engineers if we're just the architect exclusively. We may do that at certain points, but we're trying to actually bring together different parts to make something different. And while that is core to it, how we do it can vary year to year and where we're going.
So when you look back, 2016, you're coming up on, well, whatever, 8 years now. I just dated the program. I was supposed to do that. But it's important because where you are in your life and your journey,
Yeah.
what have been your biggest challenges? And we're always looking for lessons learned here to give everybody a little bit of a shortcut. What can we learn from yours?
I think the challenge is COVID, I'm sure, comes up on your shows, but COVID was hard in that I feel like it slowed the world down. I mean, if you look at what the upcoming decade of change is, in some ways, COVID might have accelerated it from a digital connectivity, but I also think human interaction on the other side of it is different.
Took
And
a
I
hit,
think,
huge hit.
yeah, yeah. And I think cities took a potential hit. And as much as everyone talks about loving to work from home, and I'm in the office today because I love it, here and seeing design, I think human connectivity is a greatest talent and attribute for solving things that are not known. And COVID slowed the world down a bit.
And how'd you kind of reboot the company and get you guys back on track? I mean, I'm sure the company slowed down. You had to adjust, but what have you done to kind of ignite that passion in your folks? And they're
Well,
scattered around the world.
yeah,
It's not as easy
and
not as easy as a company out in Kansas City where they're all kind of in the same environment.
And on top of that, we actually have a pretty flexible policy about doing work and how we do the work, that you don't have to be in the office 5 days a week. We encourage up to 3 days a week. How did we do it? We actually literally launched the second strategic framework under my tenure during that time, where we went out and physically did visits to all of the offices, aggregated all the responses on a Miro board, and just reconnected. A huge number of people actually had joined the firm from the start of COVID to when we actually did that. And it was meeting people for the first time on a common purpose, physically meeting them for the first time on a common purpose about what is our future and how do we want to script it together. So for me, timing is everything. And I think the launch of the strategic framework that we did, which was meant to be an inclusive process, was right at the right time, not knowing that COVID was, going to happen when it did.
Yeah, and I normally wouldn't go into this, but you're advising and building these things for massive corporations and institutions around the world. So it sounds like that experience made you a little more appreciative about what they're going through, and
Yeah,
how does
no.
that change the design, especially when you're changing structures and retrofitting things. I think is a phase we're in now.
And I think when you get a really smart leader in a different discipline that is thinking about a big capital project to invest in their future that needs to endure well beyond them, and they ask you, what do you think?
Yep.
You can't be polite and say, let me get back to you. You need to have an answer. And I think that's the most fun, but it's also the most daring thing you can do, is to try and be articulate and clear with purpose about what design can do to be something more than just them and their tenure.
Yeah. I ask you what people should, focus on to maybe come and work for you. So, being an architect's still a cool thing. That's good. What do you look for when you're hiring people? I mean, what do you want to see from people who are going to reach out to you after they watch this?
I think the question is, there is different ways to acquire knowledge. One is skills-based acquisition, and one is a problem-based acquisition of knowledge. How do you solve problems? For me personally, I went to a different undergraduate school than a graduate school. And as much as I thought I knew in the first 4 years of my undergrad, going to a different place and having a problem-based mindset to then be in a whole new environment reminds me that problem-based solving is crucial. And then you can build skills around it, but to make sure that you're a problem solver. And I think that's my biggest advice is coming into a design firm like ours or like for many of our peers, you have to be willing to understand what the problem at hand is and that it's not going to be the same tomorrow as it was yesterday.
Yeah, great advice. Thanks, Brad. Appreciate you joining us today. You've been listening to Brad Lukanic, who is the CEO of CannonDesign. This is Dean Tobias with the Reboot Chronicles. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you soon.